The silence behind the smile, the true story of Jeffrey Dahmer. In the city of Milwaukee, where ordinary lives moved quietly through ordinary days, there stood an apartment building that looked no different from the rest. People passed by it without a second thought. Neighbors exchanged polite nods. Nothing about it suggested horror. And yet, behind one of its doors, a darkness was growing, silent, patient, and unimaginable. That door belonged to Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer was not what people expected a killer to be. He didn't appear threatening. He spoke softly, kept to himself, and rarely drew attention. To outsiders, he was just another quiet man trying to live his life. But beneath that calm exterior was a mind filled with disturbing thoughts, thoughts that had been forming for years. As a child, Dahmer was withdrawn. He struggled to connect with others and often felt like an outsider. While other children played and laughed, he wandered alone, carrying a growing fascination with death. It began with curiosity but slowly turned into something darker, something far more dangerous. By the time he reached adulthood, those thoughts had taken control. The first crime came in 1978. Dahmer picked up a young hitchhiker named Stephen Hicks. What started as a casual meeting soon turned into something violent. When it was over, Dahmer had crossed a line from which there was no return. Instead of stopping, he hid what he had done, and continued living as if nothing had happened. 4 years, he escaped suspicion. He moved from place to place, blending into society. On the surface, he lived a quiet, uneventful life. But inside, his urges grew stronger. Eventually, in the late 1980s, he settled in Milwaukee. It was there, in a small apartment, that his crimes escalated into something far more horrifying. Dahmer began targeting young men, many of whom were vulnerable or alone. He approached them with friendliness, offering money or companionship. There was nothing obviously dangerous about him, and that was what made him so effective. Once inside his apartment, however, everything changed. What happened behind those walls remained hidden from the world for years. Neighbors noticed strange odors. Some complained. But the truth was beyond anything they could have imagined. Dahmer was living a double life, one that grew more disturbing with each passing day. His need for control deepened, and his actions became more calculated. Each crime followed a pattern, each one pushing the boundaries of human understanding. Yet somehow, he continued to avoid capture. Then, in July 1991, everything changed. One man, Tracy Edwards, entered Dahmer's apartment but managed to escape. Handcuffed and terrified, he ran into the night and found police officers. His fear was real, his story urgent. This time, it could not be ignored. When officers entered Dahmer's apartment, they expected confusion, maybe a misunderstanding. What they found instead would haunt them forever. Inside were photographs, evidence, and signs of crimes that had gone on for years. The truth revealed itself piece by piece, each discovery more shocking than the last. The quiet man who lived alone was not what he seemed. He was responsible for a series of killings that stunned the entire nation. Jeffrey Dahmer was arrested that night, and the world would soon learn the full extent of what had been hidden. During questioning, Dahmer confessed. He admitted to taking 17 lives, young men and boys whose stories had been cut short. Families who had been searching for answers were finally faced with the truth. It was overwhelming, heartbreaking, and impossible to fully comprehend. The trial that followed was filled with grief and anger. The courtroom became a place where pain was spoken aloud, where families confronted the man responsible for their loss. Dahmer showed little emotion, his quiet demeanor unchanged even as the details of his crimes were revealed. He was sentenced to life in prison, multiple life sentences that ensured he would never walk free again. But even in prison, the story did not end. In 1994, Dahmer was killed by another inmate. His death brought a sudden close to his life, but it did not erase what had happened. The pain remained. The questions remained. How had this gone unnoticed for so long? How had someone so dangerous lived among ordinary people without raising alarm? The case of Jeffrey Dahmer forced society to confront uncomfortable truths. It exposed gaps in the system, highlighted the vulnerability of certain communities, and changed the way law enforcement approached similar crimes. But beyond all of that, it left behind a lasting reminder: evil does not always appear obvious. Sometimes, it hides in silence. Sometimes, it wears a calm face. Sometimes, it lives next door. And by the time it is discovered, it may already be too late. For more real, dark, and thrilling crime stories, don't forget to subscribe to our channel Real Crime Stories USA and stay tuned for the next story.